So when you guys go home, what you want to do is you want to go and search in your email for MathWorks. Okay, so just do a search. MathWorks is the company that kind of produces MATLAB. Okay, if you type in MATLAB, it'll come up too. Okay, there should be a link that gets you directly into your MATLAB account. Okay, and when you get into it, that's what the screen should look like. Okay, if any of you have any issues getting into MATLAB, okay, what I would suggest is email me so that way I can make sure you guys can get into MATLAB. Okay, and like I said, you're not going to need MATLAB until like next week or the week thereafter, but it never hurts to make sure that you can get into it. Okay, all right. So MATLAB environment, really easy to use. Okay, when you first boot it up, the very first time, this is what you see. Okay, this is going to be where all the files are. Okay, so this screen, and when I say this screen, I mean the upper left-hand screen. Okay, so whenever you want, if you ever save a file, it's virtually in the cloud on this right here. Okay, this is going to be the output window. Okay, so that's where you guys are going to see all the stuff that you type in MATLAB. That's where it's going to come out. Okay, and then down here, this is for if you guys are real computer dorks, okay, like me. This is going to tell you what the size of the bits are that are stored in that variable in that specific instance. Okay, so MATLAB's really dorky. It helps you to be able to see that stuff. Okay, for those of you guys that are comp sci majors, this is actually pretty cool. If you're not a comp sci major, you don't care about it. Okay? Now, what you guys are going to do to start a new file is you're going to go in the upper left-hand corner, and there's this icon that says New Script all the way up here. Okay, you're going to click on that. And it's going to bring up this sort of screen, a split screen. Okay. This is where you guys are going to type in all the commands. Okay. So if you wanted to do addition, subtraction, differentiation, integration, anything like that, you're going to go up there and do it. Okay. Let me show you how easy it is to run that. Okay. So let's say I want to add 54 plus 27. Okay. Check this out. I'm going to type in 54 plus 27. And then I'm going to go. Let me get rid of this because that doesn't matter. Up here, I'm going to click on this editor tab. Okay, so if I'm somewhere else, I click on editor and then I click on run. It's going to ask me to save the file. Okay, so I'm just going to name my file. It just defaults to untitled. I'm going to save it. And down here, it gives you 54 plus 27. Okay, so it's basically like a 4-function calculator. If you want to divide numbers, add numbers, subtract numbers, you can do it down there. Okay, now, one thing that we certainly want to do is we want to use MATLAB to do more advanced computations. That's actually going to be the first question I ask you guys to do with MATLAB. So let me go ahead. I think I had it up. Let me see if I can bring it up again where the MATLAB stuff is, because I want to show you guys what problems I'm going to ask you. So that way you guys can kind of be cognizant of it. But the first question I ask you guys to do is to just use MATLAB to approximate something to 6 decimal places. Okay, so let me show you guys how to do something like this. Okay, so if I had this, okay, let's say I had like 2 sine of, let's say, pi thirds plus e to the 7th minus log base 3 of 16. Okay, and I wanted you guys to be able to evaluate that using MATLAB. Okay, what you guys are going to do. Okay, and you just have to be careful with this, with capitalizing and things like that. Okay, so you're going to type in 2 times. Okay, so in your calculator, like if you type in 2 sine of something without the multiply, it'll be okay. MATLAB's kind of dumb. Okay, you have to type in the multiplication. Okay, so 2 times the sine of pi, you type in pi as pi, divided by 3, close the parenthesis, plus. When you type in E, it's going to be exp to the 7th, okay? And then finally, you guys might remember in pre-calc, there's something called a change of base formula, where you can rewrite this as log 16 divided by log 3, okay? That's what you guys are going to have to do to put a logarithm into MATLAB, okay? So I'm going to type this in as minus log 16 divide log 3. All right, now I'm going to run this. And I want you to notice when I run it, it comes up with scientific notation down here. Okay, and let me raise this up so that way folks in the back might be able to see it. I want to print this to 6 decimal places. Okay, so this will get it out for you. But here's how you print that out. Okay, I'm going to put a semicolon there, and I'm going to use this function, fprintf. Okay, fprintf allows you to print something in a specific format. Okay, so I'm going to say fprintf, and I'm going to put an apostrophe here. By the way, we're going to be doing this a lot. Okay, so this is the first time we're doing it. I'm going to be doing this a dozen times today. So if this is like, oh my gosh, this thing's crazy, we're going to be doing a lot. Okay, so I'm going to say the answer is, and I'm going to say %.6f/n. Okay, all right. I'm going to assign this to a variable p. So I'm going to say p equals this, right? And then I'm going to say comma p. All right. So, and like I said, this is being recorded, so that way you guys can go back and you can look at it as many times as you want. Okay. So I know this is like 1 minute of seeing this stuff, so don't get too overwhelmed if you're not too big on the programming stuff. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and execute this by running it. Okay. And right down here, it tells me what the answer is to 6 decimal places. Okay. If I want to make the answer to 36 decimal places, I'll just make this 0.36 and run it. So there you go. Okay. That's something your calculator can't do, right, folks? Your calculator goes up to what, like 9 decimal places or something like that. Let's see if we can break MATLAB. That's always fun. Let's try 72. All right, it quit. It looks like it goes up to 40 or something like that, then it quits. Okay, but that's pretty good precision. Okay. All right, but all I'm asking you guys to do is to go to 6 decimal places. Okay. Let me put up another one so that way I can show you guys how to work that one. Okay, so let's say, for instance, another one I can have. Let's say I have 3 arc sine of, let's say, √2/2 plus the 5th root of 72 minus, let's say, I don't know, we'll do something easy. Let's say 2 to the 5th power, something like that. Okay. All right, to type that into MATLAB, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign that to a variable q, okay, different one. I could just do it to the same one. It doesn't matter. I'm going to say q equals 3 times a sine, so not q sine, a sine, okay, of sqrt 2 divide 2. Okay, so notice a sine is arc sine. Okay, so you have to be really specific. And I'll show you guys where to go to get a list of commands. Okay, so q equals 3 times a sine, parenthesis, sqrt is square root of 2/2. Okay, this animal right here, this 5th root of 72, I'm going to write that as 72 raised to the 1/5 power. Okay. You might remember in pre-calc that that's a way that you can take something that's a root and write it as a rational exponent. Okay. So that's how you guys, if you have a weird root, like a 4th root or a 5th root, that's how you can do that. Okay. So I'm going to say plus 72 raised to the 1/5 power and then minus 2 to the 5th power. Okay. I'm going to do a semicolon and then check this out. I can just copy and paste this and just change this to a Q, right? It's the exact same command, okay? Oh, that would probably be helpful if I had it to the right power, wouldn't it? Okay, good spot. I was just making sure people are awake. You passed my test, Colin. No, I definitely screwed it up. Good thing this isn't being recorded, right? All right. So, guys, that's one of the nice things is once you guys have a successful line of code, you can just copy and paste that code. Okay, and for those of you guys that are like computer programmers, you know that that's great, especially with output statements. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and execute this. Right. And down here are the 2 answers. Okay. One thing that's helpful, folks, is that if you notice, this command line starts to get kind of bogged down. If you ever want to clear out the command line, what you can do is you can use this command at the very top, CLC. Okay. CLC means clear the command window. Okay. It's just a short way of doing that. And so for those of you guys that want to get rid of all that stuff that's there, then you can execute the code and it basically starts new. Now it's a lot sexier than it was before, right? It had a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo in there. Now it looks better. Okay. All right. So that's literally what I'm going to ask you guys to do for the first 2 problems in the MATLAB assignment. Okay. If you guys want to see like a list of commands in Blackboard, what you guys do is you go to where it says the MATLAB assignments and help files. Okay. And then there's some other instructional videos, but here's this MATLAB quick list of commands. It'll tell you guys how to do like cosine and tangent and secant and arc sine and arc cosine. So this might be helpful for you guys to see like some of the weirder ones. Okay, so let me go and show you where that is again. Just go into Blackboard, click on where it says MATLAB assignments and help files, scroll down, and there's this quick list of commands. Okay. Also, there's a link to my online section videos too. So if you want to watch other videos, you're welcome to do it there. Okay. All right. Any questions about being able to do just numerical operations with MATLAB? Okay. Good.
Do you need comments?
No, you guys don't have to put comments in, but if you, for those of you guys that want to put comments in MATLAB, what you would do is you would just use a % sign. Okay, so at the top, I ask you guys to put your name. So I might say Chris Jones, and then notice it's green. Anything that's green is a comment, and then I could say Math 203. If I want to put the date in here, Feb 14. I love weird who's math. Okay, there we go. All right. I don't know if those are mutually exclusive, but it is what it is. Okay, so all those things are comments. They're not actually going to execute. Okay, so when I go through and execute the code, the stuff in green is not going to show up. Also, the stuff that I put a semicolon on, like these two things, if I remove the semicolon, then what it does is it comes up with the answers, like these unformatted answers. So anything that you don't want printed to a screen, just use a semicolon, okay? Sort of like in C++ or Java, you can use something to suppress the output. That's what you're doing, okay? All right, good question. Thanks, Matthew. Okay. Other questions, folks, I can answer about basic input and output. Okay, let me show you guys how to plot functions in MATLAB, okay? Let's say I wanted to plot this function, like, I don't know, easy function, like f of x equals, I don't know, x squared times sine x. Okay. And we want to see what that looks like. Okay. What I'm going to do is, right, I'm going to go ahead and use, I'm going to say sims x. Okay. Now, what that does is that makes x a symbolic variable. Okay, which means that we can now do some stuff like find limits, derivatives, other sorts of computations, or graph it. Okay, so this just makes it a symbolic variable. For some of you guys that program in like C or Java, you always have to define it as like a floating point or an integer. You don't have to do that in MATLAB except for symbolic variables. Those are the only ones you have to define. All right, check this out. I'm going to let f be equal to x squared times sine x. Okay, I'm going to suppress that, and then I'm going to say easy plot. Okay, so anytime you want to plot something, just use the easy plot function, and I'm going to say easy plot f. Okay, let me get rid of this too because I don't need it. So percent that. Okay, so these three lines can help you guys to be able to plot a function. I'm going to execute it, and then I'm going to wait a second. And check that out. There's our function right here. Okay. Right. What you can do is you can save this as a file and you can embed it into a Word document or something like that. So for those of you guys that are doing stuff for another science class like engineering or physics, you can take these images and put them into a Word doc. Okay. And sometimes you have to type up a report or something like that. That could be helpful. Okay. If I want to put an axis on here, okay, what I can do is I can say axis on. Okay. I could do grid on, and I'll show you what those two things do. Okay, and I'm just going to execute it, and not surprisingly, it's going to put a grid and some axes on there. Okay, so so notice right here we can see like the range and the domain of this thing. Okay, for those of you that care, MATLAB defaults the domain from -2 pi to 2 pi. If I want to change the domain of the function, maybe I only want it from like 0 to 10. I could say in here in this, in the easy plot, I could just say comma 0, 10. And what that does is that it plots the function over the domain from 0 to 10. So I don't want it everywhere. I just want a little bit of that function. So I'll go ahead and run it. And now it looks different, right, guys? Because I don't have the entire function there. And I think on the assignment, I asked you guys to bind the domain, okay, from like maybe -3 to 3 or something like that. So this is how you guys can go through and just only plot a portion of that function, a specific portion of it, okay? I can give the axes labels, and I can title the graph, okay? So I can say something like X label, and then I can say this is the X-axis or something like that, using apostrophes. And then I can do the same thing with a Y label, and I'll just call it the Y-axis. And I could use this function title, and I'm going to call this my graph. Boring. Okay, I know it's boring, sorry. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and execute this, and it's going to give me all the goodies that I want out of this. Okay, so there it is. I know it's difficult to see if you're sitting a little further back, but at the top here it says my graph, ... boring. I have a Y-axis, I have an X-axis. Okay. Again, for those of you guys that are doing like engineering, physics, chemistry stuff where you want to plot some relationship, this could be really helpful for you guys. Okay. All right. One last thing I want to show you before we move on from this. If I want to plot more than one graph in MATLAB, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use, right before easy plot, I'm going to use this function figure and 1, okay? What that does is that tells me that I'm looking at the first graph in a series of graphs that I'm going to print. Because I think for your assignment, I think I asked you guys to plot 2 different graphs, okay? So if we look at the assignment, okay, and again, I know it's tough to see, but notice I asked you guys to plot 2 functions, okay? So to be able to see the second function, you're going to have to use this figure command, okay? Now, if I want to plot a second function, check this out. I'm going to literally copy and paste my code that I just made, okay? I'm going to change f to a different variable. I'm going to call it g. And let's say for some reason I want to plot the arctangent function. So let's say a tan of x. I'm going to make this figure 2. Okay, so I just change it to whatever number figure I'm going towards. Okay, and then over here, I'm going to keep 0 to 10 because I can. Okay, bless you. So my second, even more boring graph. Actually, arctan is not too boring, but it's not all that exciting. Okay, let me this so you can see it. And that's one of the nice things, folks. Like I said, once you get code, you just copy and paste it and you can reuse it. Okay, so let me plot this and show you what happens as I execute this. Right. All right, so here's my first graph, figure 1. What did I do here? Oh, I forgot to change this to G, right? Okay, so I do have to change which plot I'm going for, otherwise it's going to plot the previous function. So sorry about that, folks. Let me run that again. There we go. This is our arctangent function, okay, at least from 0 up to 10. If I want to change the domain from -10 to +10, that probably gets you a little bit better graph as to what arctangent really looks like, okay? All right, so pretty cool, right, guys? Most of you guys have probably used other functions to graph plots with, like how many guys have used Excel to plot functions and stuff like that? Yeah, a lot of us have done that, or like a reaction, a scatter plot or something like that. MATLAB does a great job of plotting actual functions and relationships that are modeled. Okay. All right. Questions I can answer for you guys about plotting functions in MATLAB.
What is the percent signify?
Oh, percent is a comment. Okay. So if I don't want this printed to the screen, I just put a percent in front of it. Okay. The only other place that a percent could be used is in this fprintf statement. Okay. Right here, that just tells me like what type of variable I'm printing out. Okay, so %.6f just says it's going to be a decimal type. Okay, so but most of the time, if we don't want something printed out, I just put a % there. Okay, so does that help out with that?
So why did you put it before the symbolic variable?
Oh, just so that way when you guys go back home and look at this, you guys know that that's what this is doing. It's just like a mental note to yourself.
Oh.
Okay. So I didn't put it for everything just because we don't have time to do that. Okay. All right. I saw another hand up. Andy?
Do you want us to download this program?
You can download it, but I would just say use the virtual one, okay? The one like this one, so it does take up a lot of room, but if you just use the online version, it'll do everything you need it to. So you don't have to, okay? Yeah, just use the virtual one and that should be fine, okay? For those of you guys that want to download it, go for it. It won't be useful though after the semester unless you take Calc 2 or another class that uses MATLAB. Other questions, folks, before we go on? All right, so I want to show you guys some other stuff that MATLAB can do, okay? So for instance, let's say I want to factor a polynomial, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define an x variable and a y variable. So I'll say sims xy, and just so that way you guys remember, x and y are symbolic. Okay, so if I could spell it, sorry, S-Y-M. Okay. Let's say I want to factor something like this. Okay, so let's say I want to factor x to the fourth plus 2x cubed plus x squared. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say f is going to be equal to that function. So f equals x to the fourth plus 2 times x cubed. So remember, you always have to do times no matter what. And then plus x squared. I'm going to suppress that by using a semicolon. And then I'm going to say factor f. Okay. Let me go ahead and I'm going to block all this out so that way we're not using it. Okay. So this was my code down here. Okay. Including the symbolic. I'm going to run it. And check this out, folks. Right here, it lists out all the factors of the polynomial. Okay. So, and I know it's difficult to see if you're in the back, but the factorization would be x times x plus 1 times x plus 1. And then we know that to be x squared times x plus 1 squared, right, guys? We multiply that together, okay? So that's really cool. If you guys have a really tough polynomial to factor, MATLAB can factor it for you, okay? So for instance, let's say I had this polynomial, something like maybe 5x squared minus x minus 4, all right? Some of you guys don't like factoring the harder trinomials, right? So in MATLAB, what you could do is you could just say 5x squared minus x minus 4, right? And then you can go ahead and factor it, okay? So factor f, I'll run it, and there it goes. It gives you the 2 polynomial factors of it, okay? So for those of you guys that have a hard time factoring, this might help you to be able to do some nasty factorizations. I use this a lot in my grad work when we had like really big polynomials, okay? If I want to solve an equation, okay? So for instance, let's say I wanted to solve this equation, like x cubed minus 3x squared plus 3x plus 1 equals 0, okay? Most of us can look at that and probably figure what, like 1 or 3 or something like that might be a solution. So let me show you guys how to do that, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to define my equation. I'm going to say EQU is going to be equal to x cubed plus 3 times x squared minus, thanks, sorry. And then plus 3x times x. And then was it minus 1? Plus 1, and then I'm going to say double equal 0. Okay, so anytime you establish an equation in MATLAB, the first equal means that this is being assigned to this variable equal. The double equal means that that's going to be the test for equality. Okay, so for those of you guys that are computer programmers, most of the time you know double equal to be a Boolean statement, like an if then or a 1 and 0 sort of thing. In MATLAB, it's a little bit different. It's still assignment, okay? Then I'm just going to say solve EQU, comma, x. And what that's going to do is it's going to solve the above equation for the variable x. All right, so let me go ahead and execute this. All right, and it gives you this expression. All right, it's a complex solution, meaning that there's no real numbers to it. All right. Maybe if I pick minus 1, it might work better. Let me try that. There we go. Okay. All right. So what it'll do is it'll give you all the solutions. And notice it gives you 1, 1, 1, because this actually factors into x minus 1 cubed equals 0. Okay, if this was a minus, right? So that's how you guys can solve an equation using MATLAB. Okay. If I had this, let's say I had this guy right here, 5x squared minus x plus 4 equals 0, okay? What I could do is I could just assign EQU. I could just say that's going to be 5 times x squared minus x minus 4 equals 0, and I could solve it. And check it out. It gives you the two solutions right there for that, okay? Again, if you guys are looking at something that's a difficult function or a difficult equation, you can use MATLAB to solve it, okay? Other things you could do with MATLAB, you could simplify expressions, okay? So let's say I have f equals 3x plus 4y plus 7 minus 2x minus 5y plus 28. I could just say simplify f, okay? And what it'll do is it'll combine like terms for you, okay? That's not all that great, right, guys? We could do that pretty easily, except if you have like 15 variables, then it could be helpful, okay? So that's one of the benefits of that as well. You guys might remember, like early in the course, like simplifying something like that. MATLAB could simplify rational expressions for you as well, okay? And I could just use the simplify command. All right, so I could just say, let's let f be equal to quantity x squared minus 1 divided by quantity x plus 1. And then I'll run it. And I forgot to do simplify f. That would be helpful, right? So simplify f. And I execute it, and there we go. It factors it and simplifies it for you, okay? Again, really helpful if you're doing really big sorts of rational equations or rational functions, okay? All right, folks, we've been working on limits, right, guys? MATLAB can do limits for you as well, okay? So, for instance, if I ask you to find the limit as x approaches 3 of x squared minus 9 over x minus 3, okay? You guys know you can factor that, right, guys? That's easy. You can factor the difference of squares, cancel out the factors. MATLAB can do that for you as well, okay? So let me show you guys how MATLAB can find limits for you, all right? So I'm going to symbolically define x, and I'm going to go ahead and let f be equal to quantity x squared minus 9 divided by the quantity of x plus 3, or x minus 3, right? Okay. Then I'm going to say limit f, comma, and then what it's going to do is it's going to approach 3, okay? Usually you could do f comma x comma 3, all right? And what that'll do is that'll tell you the function f as x approaches 3, all right? I go ahead and run that, and there it goes. It gives you what the solution is down here for the limit. I could do something like f equals the quantity of the square root of x minus 3 divided by x minus 9. Okay, and I could do that limit the exact same thing, okay, as x approaches 9. Okay. And what it'll do is it'll go ahead, compute the limit for you. Oh, I suppressed it. Okay. And there you go. It gives us the answer is 1/6. Okay, I think we had that one on a quiz before too. Okay. So there you go. You can use MATLAB to be able to evaluate limits, okay? On one of the quizzes, or on one of the problems that we've looked at before, did we look at left-hand and right-hand limits as well as it approaches from the left and the right? Like we looked at something like this, the limit as x approaches 7 minus of something like 3 over x minus 7, and then maybe the limit as x approaches 7 plus of 2 over x minus, or 3 over x minus 7. MATLAB can also do left-hand and right-hand limits. And let me show you guys how to do that. Okay, it's pretty easy. So we keep our symbolic variable. I'm going to define f to be that function, 3 over the quantity of x minus 7. And then I'm going to use limit. I'm going to say f x 7. And then I'm going to say comma. And then since it's a minus, I'm going to say from the left. Okay, not left, left. Yeah, I know. Okay. And then if I go ahead and execute this, okay, notice it tells me negative infinity. Okay. If I do the same thing from the right, okay, it's going to tell me positive infinity, okay? And then one thing I can also do to show that the limit doesn't exist is just get rid of both of those, okay? And just have it as approaches 7. If you ever get this NaN, that's basically DNE, okay? So a lot of times, and some of you guys might have seen NaN in other programming languages. That's a really old way of saying it just doesn't exist, okay? Anybody ever seen that before in a different language? Okay, you have, okay. I can't remember what languages it's in.
Like nil be used for that?
Yeah, like null or something like that, but I've seen NaN a couple of times. I think it was in C++, I saw it. Anyway, but that's how you can determine whether a limit doesn't exist, is that you see that NaN. All right, so I know lots of stuff on MATLAB. A lot of it's repetitive though, right, folks? Okay. All right, I'm going to stop recording this. Stop share end.